You've spent time preparing a healthy meal for your family, but you dread dinner time. You can't leave the table until you've eaten all of your vegetables. I'm not cooking anything else. This is what's for dinner. Eat 5 more bites of broccoli and you can have dessert. Does this sound familiar? Do you ever wonder why your attempts to have your children eat healthier and stop picky eating aren't working? Today, we're going to tell you some reasons why your children may be picky eaters and what you can do to eliminate your stress and frustration when it comes to picky eating. Why is it important to make sure your children eat a healthy, balanced diet? Research shows that picky eating can result in poor nutritional status, leading to chronic disease like diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease later in life. Picky eaters tend to be at higher risk of developing learning disabilities related to attention span and low learning ability. They also tend to have poor interpersonal relationships, are uncooperative, and are also more afraid of unfamiliar places and departing from relatives.
Some parents may think they can beat around the bush. If I just give my children a daily supplement, they can eat whatever they want. That is completely false. Many vitamins and minerals can be toxic if consumed at high levels. You must also take into consideration the bioavailability of certain nutrients. This means that just because you're giving your children a certain amount of nutrients from supplements doesn't mean that their bodies will absorb all of it. Many factors interfere with absorption both negatively and positively. That is why it is important to eat real whole foods. Just remember, always check with your pediatrician before introducing supplements into your children's diet. Exactly what is picky eating? Picky eating is often the result of neophobia. Neophobia is the fear of eating unfamiliar foods. This is most common in children who are between the ages of 2 and 6 years old. They are most accepting of foods as they get older. Picky eating can also be related to personality, the way parents react to their children eating, and the way parents feed their children. Children who are sensation seeking are more willing to try new foods. Children who are often moody, angry, and harbor negative emotions tend to be picky eaters. Sometimes children have sharper senses and, for instance, may notice texture, taste, and smell more than others. These heightened senses may cause children to be less likely to try particular foods. Research shows that 1 to 3-year-old picky eaters have more of a problem with chewing foods, 4 to 6-year-olds want their food prepared in a certain way, and 7 to 10-year-olds simply have strong dislikes towards certain foods. How do your eating habits affect your children? Science explains this with something called modeling. During the first 5 years of age, children observe your behavior and attitude towards food and learn what foods are considered good based on these observations. Children associate liked and disliked flavors with the social environment. Therefore, if your children see that you are enjoying healthy food, they are more likely to eat that particular food as well. However, if your children see you enjoying healthy food but their siblings do not like that food, your children will be more likely to associate with those their age and dislike the food as well. While your children's food preferences are determined by consumption of food itself, the social environment in which your child eats is also very important. As a parent, you have a great influence on your child's eating behavior. Your children observe your behavior and are more inclined to try foods you are already eating. Therefore, you are the model that your children will imitate as they grow and decide which foods they prefer.
Children prefer foods that they are familiar with and foods they have not been forced to eat. If your home has fruits and vegetables available on a regular basis, your children may be more motivated to try those foods. Overall, children are more likely to try new foods when those foods are introduced to them in a laid back environment with little pressure. It is also important to keep in mind that children typically prefer tender meats and cooked vegetables over tough meats and raw vegetables. Children might dislike a food if it is difficult to chew. This is most common in toddlers. Research shows that parenting style and eating behavior are related. By labeling and restricting certain bad foods or junk foods, your intentions of getting your children to eat healthy may backfire and cause your children to prefer the restricted foods. Restricting certain foods and pressuring your children to eat certain foods can result in neophobia, as we talked about earlier. Therefore, rewarding your children with dessert for eating healthy foods or not letting them leave the table without eating certain foods are not effective in the long run. This can cause your children to develop a negative attitude towards these foods, causing them to dislike the food even more. Verbal praise is proven to enhance children's preference for certain foods. It is important to be firm and structured, but also acknowledge your children's freedom to choose foods on their own. They will be more willing to try foods when they feel like they have been incorporated into the decision making. Little to no parenting structure can increase pickiness, so if you remain firm while also being aware of their choices, you can challenge their choice and still be effective in decision making. Because food choices are influenced by the environment and what's available, one way to choose foods for your children without disregarding their own decision making is to control the overall environment of foods available to reduce the foods you don't want them to eat and increase the foods you want them to eat. If you only buy foods that you want your children to eat, you are able to control what they eat without noticing. Children may endure anxiety to overcome pickiness. As a parent, you must also endure this anxiety and frustration in a calm way. Do not give up on your children's pickiness, because if you stop introducing new or disliked foods just because you fear a tantrum, this can result in negative reinforcement of avoiding foods, and pickiness can increase over time. A study was conducted in a school cafeteria to determine how many tastes of a particular food were required for that food to be liked. The study found that after 12 separate tastings, most children began to like a previously disliked fruit after 2 tastings, and a previously disliked vegetable after 5 tastings. It can take as many as 12 to 15 tastings to develop a liking for a particular food. Sometimes parents are too quick to determine that their children dislike a food. If your child seems to not like the food the first time they try it, this does not mean that your children do not like that food. With repeated exposure and tasting, your children can begin to like a food that was once disliked. Now you may be wondering, how can I solve this problem?
My Plate is a nutritional guide created by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It's a visual tool to remind Americans to eat healthy and focus on variety, amount, and nutrition. Your plate should have components of all food groups, just like the My Plate visual. Foods should be low in sodium, added sugar, and saturated fat. For more information about My Plate, you can visit their website. Now we want to tell you about some resources from the USDA that are free in both English and Spanish and can be found by visiting the link on the screen. The 2-Bite Club is a book that introduces My Plate to children. The book's characters encourage children to try new foods from each food group by just taking 2 bites. This book can be downloaded from the USDA's website. Coloring pages and a certificate are included in the download, as well as tips and advice for feeding your children a healthy diet. The USDA's Team Nutrition page features recipes and food preparation ideas to help children learn about My Plate and the food groups in an enjoyable way. Let's start with breakfast. It can be difficult to find a breakfast meal that's nutritious but also tasty. Most breakfast foods are loaded with sugar and not enough nutrients that your children need to start their day. The Fruitalicious Breakfast Cup is a great way for your children to take ownership in preparing their breakfast and to choose the ingredients they feel like eating that day. First, place a few spoonfuls of low-fat yogurt into a cup. Then add a few spoonfuls of whole grain cereal, followed by their fruit of choice. Repeat this layering until the cup is full. This recipe not only incorporates dairy, grain, and fruit food groups, but you can also teach your children about patterns when they are layering the ingredients. Another recipe is the Friendship Pocket. This pita sandwich is a unique way to incorporate all 5 food groups. Starting with the whole wheat pita bread, children can stuff their pita pocket with turkey or ham, lettuce or spinach, and low-fat cheese. Serve with a side of fruit, and your children can enjoy this lunch with friends. The Rainbow Crunchy Wrap is a colorful snack that your children will surely enjoy. Using a whole wheat tortilla, your children can first paint the sky with reduced fat cream cheese spread. Then they can make a rainbow on the tortilla with colorful veggies. Each one of these recipes allows your child to take part in the decision making of preparing their food, which will make them more eager and excited to eat these meals. As mentioned previously, you're allowing them to make decisions, but you're controlling the food environment so that their decisions are healthy no matter what.
Because the first contact with food is visual, the way food looks can give expectations as to how the food will taste, and this can affect your children's desire to eat the food. For example, research shows that children are more willing to eat fruit in a shish kebab form than fruit on a plate. The color, shape, size of food affects preference. Another study found that more food was consumed when it was served on white plates because the white plate created more contrast between the food and the background, resulting in the food to appear more colorful and therefore more appealing. Separating foods on the plate makes your children think that there is more of a variety of food, which will result in them eating more. Coming up with menus each week can be exhausting, and there's nothing more disappointing than cooking a meal to only find out that your children don't like what you have made. You may have heard of the saying, Try Day Friday. This catchy phrase is gaining popularity by encouraging people to try new things. Most recently, school cafeterias have adopted Try Day Fridays to create excitement around trying new foods. Have Try Day Fridays in your own home with the whole family to try new foods. Based on the reviews, incorporate these foods into next week's menu. Changing the way a food is prepared may increase liking of that food. For instance, bake kale in the oven for tasty kale chips, or dry fruit in the oven for a tasty snack.
Snacking is prevalent in school-aged children and has a significant effect on picky eating. In one study of children who visited supermarkets with their parents, more than half of the requests of the children were for snack foods. Research has also proved that snack foods can have a negative impact on weight gain, caloric intake, and nutrient balance. Parents should gradually prohibit snacks between meals so that children are actually hungry at mealtimes and motivated to eat a variety of foods. Don't stop cold turkey. This could result in rapid weight loss and decreased physical activity due to an immediate reduction in total calories consumed. Over half of the 30,000 advertisements children view each year promote food. These ads do affect children's eating preferences. Research has shown that parents yield to their children's requests 45 to 65% of the time in the supermarket. Are you willing to let these ads consume you? Instead of asking an open-ended question, such as, what kind of breakfast foods would you like this week? You could offer 2 different healthy options and allow your children to choose between them. This still gives your children a sense of control in the foods they eat, fulfills their desire for autonomy, and engages them in the meal preparation process. One study observed children and parent co-shoppers in a grocery store and found that oftentimes children are more interested in reading, counting, and spelling rather than the actual food itself. Trips to the grocery store may serve as a great learning experience beyond asking for treats. This is an optimal time to teach your children about nutritional content. Children particularly love to learn about new fruits and vegetables and expand their vocabulary. By using trips to the grocery store as a teaching tool, you will be able to gradually expose your children to a variety of healthy foods, and they will be more willing to try new things. Sometimes time and money can make eating healthy difficult, which can prevent you from offering a variety of foods to your children in order to overcome picky eating. Here are some tips. Buy produce that is in season because it's less expensive than produce that's not in season. Frozen vegetables without added sauces and butter are just as healthy as fresh and are a cheaper alternative. If you want to avoid the possible headache of having to tell your children to put down the cookies at the supermarket, take them to the farmer's market instead. It is an enjoyable outing with only healthy options available. Reinvent leftovers and combine with different sides for a new dish.
Let's recap. Eating healthy is important. Modeling is key. Your children are constantly observing your behavior, especially when it comes to food. The food environment can influence your children's food choices. Remember that it's important to acknowledge their desire to make choices. If you control the overall environment, you can still allow them to make choices, but their options are all parent approved. And lastly, make trying new foods fun. Be creative in the kitchen and include your children in the process.
Thanks for watching.
A banana is a fruit, broccoli is a veggie, rice is a grain, chicken is a protein food, milk is dairy, and now we got 5. We're gonna feel our best, we're gonna feel alive, alive with 5 of you and